And that kind of leads me to the problems with the pop culture version of no contact, and where I get a little bit triggered when I see this popping up everywhere on social media. And that's because estrangement can be necessary for some people, especially in cases of like abuse. This growing trend of going no contact without prior attempts at repair raises a lot of concerns for me as a mental health professional, because I think it wraps around some social guidelines around it being totally okay. But I think a lot of the times it doesn't consider that there's other people on the other side of that equation. And so if there's like a lack of emotional clarity, for example, let's say someone says, I blocked my mom after a fight, and then months later, I still feel angry and confused. And I'm thinking about like the mom who doesn't understand what happened, because that pattern was always what happened is we always fought, and then we would talk and make up later. And then all of a sudden this one happens and my daughter won't call me back. And, she still feels angry. She still feels confused. I don't know that as the mom. And I think about all this unfinished business where someone circling back and saying, I want to talk to you about that fight. Before, my habit would have been to just sweep it under the rug. But what I want to do now is make sure that I stop doing that. And when you said, whatever it is that you said, I felt really hurt and angry, and I felt really shamed. And I want you to work on not talking to me like that. And if, at a minimum, if that happens, I'm going to disconnect, and I'm going to say, I'm going to talk to you later, and we're going to stop, and I'm going to set that boundary. And then you'll need to circle back and take some accountability for it. That's an example of how to do this in a more emotionally clear way. But a lot of times people don't know what they're feeling. And that's really where the roadblock happens. And so there's some work to do on the part of the person who's hurt. Is we have to be responsible for our emotional experience. We have to be responsible for knowing what we need. We have to be responsible for expressing what we're going through. And as a child, we shouldn't have had to do that. But as an adult, we do. As an adult, we are the only ones that can take accountability for our emotional experience in a situation, bring light and words to the situation, and then set an appropriate boundary for what it is that we need from the person we're in relationship with. And that's not on the person who hurt you. If you're hurt, you've got to say what that was that happened. People can't read your mind, and that can be frustrating. And as a child, it isn't appropriate. As a child, parents should just circle back, and they should say, mommy was really angry. I shouldn't have said that. That wasn't your fault. And we should be doing that as parents of young children. But as an adult, we've got to set the expectations for what it is that we want, which brings me to my next point. A lot of times we're really missing skills that are required for assertive communication because we learned from our parents, and they maybe didn't know how to teach us that. And as a result, we've got this content, this skill set that's lacking. And so if that's an area for you, a gap for you, I do have a show on communication and how to have more assertive communication. So check back in the full playlist for that. But a lot of times people just don't know how to set boundaries. They don't know how to do it without blowing up or avoiding and then bringing something like a stockpiling from months and months past. And then the person is like, wait, why didn't you tell me this so many months ago? I would have been so sorry. I would never want to hurt you. And I didn't even know this happened. And so that assertive communication is really part of what's needed on behalf of the person who feels hurt. And in this circumstance, we're talking about, the adult kids who go no contact. We've got some accountability to take with expressing what it is that we need.